Electric vehicles are the future, right? So why are we making it harder for people to get their hands on them? Today, we're tackling the hot topic of tariffs on imported EVs and why these changes are not just unfair, they're downright ridiculous. From stifling innovation to punishing consumers, we'll break down how these tariffs are slowing down the transition to a greener world and what it really means for your wallet. The drive towards decarbonization in the automotive industry is facing unexpected challenges, particularly as the US and EU ramp up tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles. These increased tariffs are a response to concerns that China is flooding these markets with low-cost EVs, but the move comes with unintended consequences. Not only could these restrictions slow down the transition to greener road transport, but they might also have negative repercussions for domestic automakers. To understand the situation better, I spoke with Max Reed, a principal analyst in the battery supply chain sector. For over a century, the global supply of internal combustion engine vehicles was dominated by major manufacturers of the US, Europe, and Japan. However, the emergence of EVs has disrupted this long-standing dominance, and the strategies of many Western car makers have become closely tied to China's booming EV industry. These companies have increasingly relied on Chinese supply chains, particularly for critical components like batteries and specialized electronic technologies essential for EVs. China, recognizing the potential of the EV market, took bold steps to establish its own robust EV supply chain. The country leveraged its partnerships with Western manufacturers through joint ventures, gaining crucial knowledge and expertise. Significant investments in research and development, coupled with a focus on producing high-quality batteries and achieving vertical integration, have allowed China to become a formidable competitor in the global EV market. For policymakers in the US and the EU, China's rapid success is seen as the result of extensive government subsidies and what they perceive as an unfair competitive edge. This perception has led to the implementation of steep tariffs on Chinese EVs, aimed at protecting domestic industries from being overwhelmed by low-cost imports. While the intention behind these tariffs is to safeguard local economies, the repercussions are complex. First and foremost, limiting imports of Chinese EVs and batteries could slow down the decarbonization efforts in the US and Europe. These regions are aiming to reduce carbon emissions from road transport, and the availability of affordable EVs is crucial to achieving this goal. By making Chinese EVs more expensive through tariffs, consumers may face fewer affordable options, potentially delaying the widespread adoption of electric vehicles. Moreover, the tariffs could have unintended consequences for domestic automakers. Many of these companies have integrated Chinese components into their supply chains, particularly for batteries, which are the heart of an EV. Higher tariffs on these essential components could drive up production costs for domestic manufacturers, making their EVs more expensive and less competitive in the global market. This could stifle innovation and slow down the overall growth of the EV sector in these regions. The situation presents a delicate balancing act for Western governments and automakers. On one hand, there's a need to protect domestic industries from the potential economic dominance of China in the EV sector. On the other hand, it's crucial to continue advancing decarbonization efforts, which rely heavily on the availability of affordable and high-quality EVs. One potential path forward could involve increasing investment in domestic battery production and other critical EV technologies to reduce reliance on Chinese imports. However, this would require significant time and resources to achieve the scale and efficiency that China has already developed. Another approach might involve negotiating trade agreements that allow for the import of Chinese components while ensuring that domestic industries are not unfairly disadvantaged. Such agreements could help maintain the momentum of decarbonization while protecting local economies. The rise of Chinese EVs on the global stage is a testament to the country's strategic investments and rapid industrial growth. However, the response of the US and EU, both in the form of higher tariffs, has introduced a new set of challenges. These tariffs, while intended to protect domestic markets, could inadvertently slow down the transition to electric vehicles and increase costs for consumers and manufacturers alike. Navigating these challenges will require careful consideration of both economic and environmental goals. For Western automakers and governments, the path forward will involve finding ways to foster domestic innovation and production while maintaining access to the global supply chains that have made EV revolution possible. Balancing these priorities will be key to ensuring a sustainable and competitive future for the automotive industry. In response to China's growing dominance in the EV market, both the US and EU have taken significant steps to curb the influx of low-cost Chinese EVs. The Biden administration recently escalated its trade measures by raising U.S. import tariffs on Chinese EVs from 25% to a staggering 100%. In addition, tariffs on batteries imported from China were increased from 7.5% to 25%. Not to be outdone, the EU also announced new tariffs this week. Starting later this year, Chinese battery-powered EVs entering the EU will face additional duties of up to 38.1%, depending on the brand, on top of the existing 10% duty. Why is Europe more cautious than the US? While both the US and the EU are concerned about China's growing influence in the EV market, the EU has taken a more cautious approach. This is primarily because the EU is far more dependent on Chinese EVs than the US. In 2023, the EU imported 40 times more vehicles from China than the US did. Additionally, China's share of fully electric vehicles imported into the EU skyrocketed from 4% in 2019 to 67% last year. Many leading automakers, including Tesla, BMW, MG, and Volvo, have already set up production hubs in China to take advantage of lower manufacturing cost. These manufacturers are exporting numerous EV models from China to the EU, and this trend shows no signs of slowing down. Given this reliance, the EU's more modest tariff increases are a compromise. They aim to strike a balance between allowing consumers access to affordable Chinese EVs and preventing European manufacturers from shifting their production entirely to China. If the EU were to impose tariffs similar to those of the US, it could prevent EVs from reaching price parity with traditional internal combustion engine vehicles. This, in turn, could jeopardize the EU's goal of achieving 100% fleet emissions reductions by 2036. Another reason for the EU's cautious approach is China's significance as a major export market for European automakers. European manufacturers, particularly those producing premium ICE vehicles, cannot afford to risk a trade war with China that could have costly repercussions. If you enjoyed watching this video, do like, share, and subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to hit that bell icon for more such videos.